Let me tell you, I had one of the most intense nights of my life. And I already know this is just the beginning. I feel like I should start off by saying that I think Derek is a lost cause. Before I can explain how I came to that conclusion, I need to explain what happened to myself first. I crawled out of the window and was about to attempt to climb the fence I entered from, when the suited man stopped me and pointed over to the other side of the backyard. Go over the brick wall and await for retrieval, the woman said, sounding slightly like Siri. I ran to the other end of the yard and hopped the wall just to see the suited man standing there waiting for me. What the fuck? You were just over there, I said, pointing at James's house. Well, now I'm over here, champ. This was unreal. I must have been higher than I thought. Did you just teleport? The man slightly smirked at me. Ran over here, just like you. He said it like it was normal. I didn't even see or hear this guy approach at all. We can chat later. Get in. I swung around, startled from the voice that came from behind me. I turned to see the lady sitting there in a black unmarked car that resembled a BMW with the window down. How the fuck did you do that? The man answered for her. Simple. We're quick and quiet. Need to be in our line of work. It still didn't explain how a lady in a suit snuck up on me with a car in a ratty alleyway. Dude, I can barely believe quick and quiet for you, let alone her sneaking up on me with a literal car. That's a lot more than just quick and quiet. That's like some superpower ninja shit. The woman spoke up. They're almost here. Get in. I obliged and hopped into the backseat. The man was already sitting in the passenger seat with the seatbelt on somehow. I decided to stop questioning the fact that he was too fast for me to register, because it seemed like I was gonna have to end up getting used to it. The car sped off, and not long after, I saw a bunch of cop cars fly by towards James's house. I was weirded out by the fact that none of the cops noticed us speeding by. They didn't even look in our direction, as if we were never there to begin with. Alright, who the fuck are you people? I said, wanting to get some type of answer. They both simultaneously looked over at me and said, John and Jane Doe. The more time I spent with these people, the creepier they get. They knew more than they should. They were faster and quieter than reason. They were in identical, pristine suits and sunglasses regardless of the lighting. Like they were cheesy secret agent cartoons that hopped straight out of a comic book. Worst of all, they were both paying zero attention to the road as they were both facing me, but somehow we never crashed. John and Jane Doe? Seriously? If you two are gonna lie to me, at least be more original, I said, annoyed that they thought I wouldn't notice such a default name like that. Simultaneously again, they said, Well, that's the name. They were still paying zero attention to the road, but the car seemingly drove itself. John Doe tilted his head slightly. Believe it or not, kid, I don't care. Never been called anything different. Alright, John and Jane Doe, what is going on here? I said to them, needing some type of relief from all this confusing shit. After an extremely awkward pause of silence, Jane spoke up. There have been disturbances in the area. We detected extreme amounts of energy bursts around here, and there are a lot of red flags that point to the fact that entry was made into our reality multiple times. John Doe started talking next. Your pal James has been meddling with things that should have never been disturbed. After we detected the first entry, we have been keeping this area under tabs. Confirmed entry was locked for tonight. You were affected by the anomaly, We need to gather everyone who made contact, Carter. This is very serious. Do you know where your friends are, and what do you remember from your encounter? I explained to them what happened to my friends and I, and they listened silently. I never mentioned the journal, as they never mentioned it, and I still didn't fully trust them. I heard a hint of intrigue in John's next words. You never asked it a question? No, why? He avoided my question and continued. We need to get Derek now. Those type of questions aren't meant to be asked. Derek's probably at the hospital. He's in bad shape right now. The next moment, we were in front of the hospital. I didn't understand it, but whatever. It seems like there are going to be a lot of things that are going to make me question reality. We made our way into the lobby, and after John and Jane exchanged a few words with the head nurse, we were given the info to Derek's room. He was located in the psych ward for his condition. We quickly went to the room number and walked in. This is where things turned from confusing to horrifying. Not good, John said. The first hints of fear I've heard from either one of them. The room was a bloodbath. Instead of Derek, there was a dead doctor lying in a pool of blood. Eyes gouged out and the body riddled with slices and stabs from what I assumed was a scalpel. The man's face was stuck in a horrible grimace, alluding to the fact that he was probably alive when his eyes were removed. There was a message that said, I see. Can you? Scrawled out in the doctor's blood. I looked over to a chair that was in the middle of the room. The chair had leather restraint straps that were ripped. Jesus. Was Derek really capable of doing this? Jane grabbed my shoulder, snapping me out of my thoughts. We need to find Derek and contain him before this gets any worse. We ran out of the hospital to find out Derek had killed another nurse during his escape. Same MO. Gouged out eyes with the same message written in the victim's blood. I told him Derek was probably on his way back home, and we seemingly teleported over there with the car once again. The front door was already creaked open on our arrival. We slowly made our way into Derek's house, and it seemed normal enough so far. I called out Derek's name a couple of times, with no answer. I was already preparing myself for the worst as we made our way through the house and checked the rooms. My worries were confirmed when I found Derek's parents in their bed, slaughtered. Derek's dad was almost unrecognizable from whatever mutilation Derek inflicted on him. There was blood dripping down the walls on his side of the bed from how extra vicious his demise was. Throat ripped out and heart removed, to my later horror when John and Jane informed me. I was staring at the scene in shock. I looked over to Derek's mom, and the damage to her wasn't nearly as bad. It seemed like she bled out from the eye gouging. I started to cry, and my knees buckled and gave in. I was crying at the end of the bed, and for once, John and Jane didn't try to rush me. I took a couple more moments to collect myself and looked up to the wall on the mother's side. The message was slightly different this time. It said, "One sees, one does not. Can you?" As I was staring at the message, a weak whisper proceeded to scare the living shit out of me. Carter? Is that you, honey?" My tears quickly returned. I walked over to her, grabbed her hand, and knelt down. "Yes, ma'am. It's me, Carter. What happened to you?" I said, trying my hardest not to sound like a blubbering child. She squeezed my hand hard and muttered, "Derek did this to us." Have you ever wondered if a person with no eyes could cry? If the tear ducts are still intact enough, tears can flow. But without eyes, the tears just leak back into the eye sockets unless the head was tilted forward and leaked out that way, or it could come out of the nasal cavity. I wish it was as simple as that. She was obviously too weak to move, but shifted her head upwards slightly. She had so much blood pulled up that when she started to cry, the blood-tear mixture spilled over and out of her eye sockets. Waterfalls of blood and tears pouring down her face, eventually covering our hands as it was leaking down her neck and arms. He wouldn't stop rambling about the truth, and can we see it? My husband tried to reason with him, but that wasn't the reaction Derek was looking for. She resumed crying again. I tried to ask her where Derek went, but she just kept on crying. "We gotta help her, please. Can you guys do anything?" I said, looking over to John and Jane. "I'm sorry, Carter. Her wounds are too severe. It's a miracle that she's made it this long in the first place," Jane said, sounding like an unemotional nurse. "It's okay, honey. I told him I can see," Derek's mom said, sounding a little out of it. "What do you mean you can see? Please, miss, stay awake. I can get you help. We can find Derek and..." Derek's mom cut me off. "Carter, I've always loved you like a second son. I'm sorry for the way I acted towards you last night. I forgive you. Take care of Derek for me, would you, sweetie?" I started to break down more. "Wait, please. I've lost too much for you to go too." I started to look around for something, anything to maybe stop the bleeding. But the more I searched, the more I realized I couldn't save her. She died, still holding my hand, 10 seconds later. After about a minute of silence, John and Jane managed to get me back into the car. John put his hand on my shoulder. "Come on, Carter. We need to find Derek before he hurts someone else. Then we can work on locating Johnny." He was right. We need to get Derek before he does something else, and we need to find Johnny. "I think I might know where he is," I said, feeling numb from the grief. When we were all kids, we had a treehouse that we'd all hang out in. It was our little escape from the world and would get us through the most stressful days. Well, at least as stressful as it can get for a kid, like getting in an argument with our parents or being overwhelmed with schoolwork. Derek might be at our old treehouse, but we have to hurry. We got back to the car, and when I was about to tell him where to go, we were in front of the treehouse. It didn't even make sense how the car was able to get to the spot in the first place, because it was surrounded by trees and foliage that wouldn't allow a car to even fit. We always had to navigate our way and couldn't bring a bike through. Nevertheless, the car was sitting under our treehouse. We made our way up the tree and had to be extra careful not to slip as the ladder planks that were nailed into the tree were soaked in blood. It looks like I was right about Derek coming here. I found Derek facing away from us, sitting crisscross and muttering to himself. There was a pile of ice sitting next to him. 10 eyes to be exact. I slowly approached my friend. "Derek?" Derek's head shot up, but didn't look at me. "Carter, I was wondering when you showed up. We need to save humanity, man. Now that you're here, we can make others see the truth. Together. He sounded so delusional. Derek, what you're doing isn't saving them, man. You're murdering them. You killed your own fucking parents. You keep talking about how you can see, but you're blind to how wrong this all is. Derek chuckled. Right, wrong, life, death. It's all irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. I'm giving you one chance, Carter. Follow me and save humanity. Or get out of my way and continue to be blind. John and Jane Doe stepped in at this point. No, Derek, we're giving you one chance to surrender and come with us peacefully. We can help you both. I have a message that humanity needs to understand. It's our next step to evolution. It's my mission. If you don't understand that, so be it. Jane stepped up to Derek to subdue him before anything escalated, but it was too late. Derek swung around to reveal an eyeless, bloody version of my friend with a psychotic smile. He punched Jane in the head, and she bursted through the treehouse, breaking through the window and flying into darkness outside. John was already grabbing Derek's outstretched arm when Derek flung his head back and reverse headbutted him. John's nose bursted and black blood started to ooze out, but he showed no sign of pain. In an instant, John was in front of Derek and kneed him in his gut. This caused Derek to fly upwards slightly, and before he could land, John brought his fists up and put them together, then slammed them down onto Derek's back. Derek hit the floor and the floorboards splintered with the impact. The treehouse was going to collapse on itself soon if this kept up. Derek growled and swept John's leg, but he caught himself with his hand and came back up. It looked like he did a cartwheel and someone pressed the rewind button. He kicked Derek in the side of the head, and by this point, Jane double front flipped back into the treehouse through the hole she crashed through earlier and landed on his back. Derek kept on trying to fling himself around, but they were both holding him down. Jane holding one arm and John holding the other, both of them pressing their knees into his back. John pulled this piece of shiny metal that was the size and shape of a credit card and placed it on Derek's wrist. The moment the metal made contact with Derek's skin, I saw it glow with intricate patterns and it engulfed his whole hand. Jane then brought his other arm to it and the glowing metal engulfed that one too. Derek tried to pull his arms out of it, but every time he did, the markings would glow and small sparks of red electricity would spurt out and make him scream in pain. The whole struggle went down in seconds. He eventually stopped trying to break free and we got him into the car. Derek wouldn't stop freaking out unless we took the ice with us too. Instead of fight it, we just complied to make it easier. John cleaned up his face and Jane fixed her suit, and it seemed like they never even gotten in a reality-defying fight in the first place. I saved the "why do you have black blood" question for another time. Now that we have Derek, we need to get him into containment while we figure out where your friend Johnny is, Jane said while pressing on the gas pedal. We approached a strange-looking two-story building that was seemingly in the middle of nowhere. I have no idea how far we traveled, but I guess it doesn't matter. We made our way into the building and it was eerily empty. John and Jane Doe escorted us to an elevator and we started to descend. For a while. Once we were who knows how many floors down, the doors opened to a floor with many identical clear cells. Derek was placed into one, and the metal brace constraining him was removed by some robotic arm and placed into a tray that John grabbed it back from. The arm then placed a jar on a nightstand that was by Derek's new bed. The jar contained the ice that Derek also needed. They were disinfected and placed into a type of preservation fluid to prevent decay. This seemed to soothe Derek for the time being, and they brought me back up to the surface level to discuss Johnny. John and Jane Doe had me wash up and then set me down on a couch and gave me some coffee while they sat on an adjacent couch. John started speaking after a couple of long sips of his black coffee. That being you have encountered was brought upon by your pal James, and we are still working on exactly how he did that. You were all exposed to a type of energy that was not meant to be encountered. I cannot explain why the thing mentioned your fate or called you guys by those strange names, but we do know one thing for certain. It took Johnny and James to a different place. We need to know the origin of the being to figure out exactly where. Alright, well, how the hell are we supposed to do that? And will something happen to me? Jane looked over towards me. Simple, Carter. Deduce what you already know. It seems like, from what you've told me, is that the thing has an infatuation with a black hole. Maybe we should start there. As for you changing, I think you're fine. Derek is like this because of the knowledge he was imbued with. You know what? That's what I was kinda thinking about too. Because that stupid talk is what sparked this whole fiasco. And yeah, that does make sense. What stupid talk? Jane and Joe said simultaneously. We got stoned and we were talking about the universe, and Derek asked what would happen if we survived the black hole. We stated that we thought about it, and that was that. I don't get how that stupid conversation started all of this, I said, recapping the events in my mind. Jane seemed interested. Well, go on. What were your theories? I said we'd probably get destroyed. Johnny was passed out, and James said it depends on what's on the other side. They stayed silent for a second before Jane spoke again. Curiosity can lead to unexpected things. That conversation was the seed of curiosity for James's mind. You are sure this conversation led to the encounter, right? I'm positive, ma'am. Then I think I might know where your friend is. Where would that be? John and Jane Doe both looked at each other, then back at me. He's on the other side. I have been thinking a lot about what they have told me. If what they say is true, then Johnny was taken to a fucking black hole. I have a strong feeling that the first readable page in James's journal might contain a clue regarding the location of it. It's just a feeling that I have, but I can't be sure. There could be countless black holes located in any part of our universe. John, Jane and I are trying to figure out the location, mainly them though. I'm still not sure if I should hand over the page to them or not. I still want to keep the journal to myself for now. I want to help, but I'm just not sure if I can fully trust them. I still don't even understand their motives. Regardless, wish me luck, and I will update you guys if we find the location or not. Thanks for your support. Carter, Lux. I've cracked it. I was able to put the clues together, and I'm 99% sure I might have found the black hole. I went back and analyzed the page to see if I could find anything else, and I think I did. I believe the shadow might have come from one of the galaxies in the galaxy cluster that's from the Vertigo constellation. Specifically, I believe it's located in a faraway galaxy referred to as Messier 87. Coincidentally, this elliptical galaxy has a massive black hole at its center. As you all know, my whole life has been altered due to a series of questions and the actions of the shadow by founding the ramblings of a madman and somehow gained the aid of a couple of unnatural agents named John and Jane Doe. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't doubt you for thinking I'm insane. For those of you that are caught up, I handed over the page to John and Jane Doe without letting them know about the whole journal. After they did a few tests, they seemed to be set on that particular galaxy. They said something about it being one of the brightest galaxies due to the energy output originating from the hole. I couldn't understand all of the little details, but they seemed very concerned by it. After some more deliberating with each other, they told me they have a way to get me to the other side. John looked over at me, giving me a look of worry that somehow expressed itself through his pitch-black sunglasses. "Carter, this situation might be more serious than we originally thought. We believe we have the location of your friend, or at least the energy trace from the shadow. There's just 2 things." "How bad is it?" John and Jane simultaneously sighed and said, "The device we have can take you there, but there's no predicting where on the other side you'll go. Second, if we go, there's a great likelihood that we will be split up. The thing is, we know nothing of how it will be like once we get there." I needed a second to take in what they said, try to realize the gravity of what they are asking of me. Would you willingly throw yourself into an unknown universe to save a real friend's life? Would you actually be willing to put your life on the line to other powers that are out of your control and understanding? Will it even work or ever find Johnny? Is he even alive? I'm sorry if I sound like I'm hesitating or making excuses, but can you really blame me? By John and Jane Doe's analysis, it means we potentially have a whole planet to blindly search in order to locate my friend. Even worse, there's a huge chance I'll have to survive in that said unknown planet all by myself. I can barely imagine myself thriving in the middle of the ghetto in my own town, so how the fuck am I supposed to make a difference in a whole alternate world? I felt scared inside. An intense pit in the bottom of my stomach that felt like it was being squeezed and pulled to hell by Satan himself. There was just one thing that was overriding that fear and kept me planted where I was, instead of running my ass out of that building when I had the chance. I felt rage. Rage from the fact that my life, friends, family, and my understanding of reality itself was taken from me. The fact that I now know I was just an insignificant piece of space dust that higher entities use for entertainment. Rage at how one conversation can change so many lives forever. Most of all, rage from the fact at how useless I felt about the whole thing. Useless. I have to make a change. Fuck it. Johnny would do the same thing for me. John and Jane. I'm ready. But before we go, we need to make a damn good survival plan for if we get split up. And I would like to have some words with Derek before our departure. John smirked. "Attaboy, go talk to your friend and meet me up at level 2. Jane will take you to the containment ward." Jane and I made our way back down to the cell room, and this time I started to observe the floor for once. Most of them were empty and a couple of them looked used at some point. The intriguing part was that there were a few other cells that were occupied with other so-called subjects. I walked down the hallway that led to the cell doors and made my way to Derek's cell. I managed to get a look at the involuntary resident in a cell before his. The cell door was different from the rest. It had a reinforced titanium-like door with a square observation hatch with a special type of glass on it. The cell was also the only one that wasn't see-through because the rest of the cell was covered in the same type of metal but with a darker, blackish tint to it. I walked up to the window and peered inside. The room was slightly hard to see due to a mysterious grayish hazy mist that filled the room. When focusing on it, it seemed like there were even spores or some type of particle floating around in the mist too. It seemed extremely toxic. I saw a small shape in the very back of the cell, and I think it noticed my presence too, because it got up and took a couple steps forward. The thing came into view, and I couldn't understand what I was looking at. The thing was the size of a small child, but that is where the similarities end. It was, or at least seemed, very skinny with arms that went to its knees, long spindly fingers and thin needle-like nails at the end. The nails slightly scraped the floor from how elongated its arms and fingers were, and because of its hunched rat-like posture. I said the thing was skinny, but I never said it looked malnourished. I couldn't tell if it had bones, because I couldn't see any type of ribs or bone in areas a skinny person would show. The thing resembled something out of a child's drawing book, like one of those innocent drawings a kid would do and be proud of when you take a look at it, but it's actually super unsettling or creepy. Yet you act nice anyways because it's a kid. This was a living version of that. Paper white skin with a smooth, slightly curvy noodle-like body, but still held up. It had a big head for its size, and enormous eyes with pure black pupils with seemingly no iris. It was scary at how undetailed the bald head was. Eyes bigger than they should, a slight bump with no holes to breathe through as a nose, and a small thin black slit as a mouth. Even though the body shape seemed noodle-like and boneless, that did not mean it was muscleless. I would never in a million years go into the same room with that thing, even with my size advantage, and even if there was no weird mist stuff to worry about. This thing was ripped somehow. Starting from below the chest was a prominent 8-pack, and its breathing made its abs, arms, and shoulder area flex intensely with each slow breath. It looked like it could and would chase me down and rip me apart in a heartbeat. I knew it was intelligent though. I could see it in its creepy, curious, childlike gaze. It was observing me, as if I was the one in the cell. It made me feel extremely uneasy with just a stare, but I could easily handle its image compared to the shadow encounter. The shadow was some alternate being beyond understanding. This thing, scary as fuck, yes, but at least it didn't mess up my mind and make my literal atoms feel weird. Then it found a way to make me freak out. It smiled at me. The slit of a mouth literally spread into a huge grin from ear to ear, revealing spinning needle-like teeth that looked like it drilled into itself with every movement of its mouth. The thing's eyes went completely jet black, while everything I could see in the room started to decay and the floating particles started vibrating violently. I was staring in horror until I noticed the glass slightly crack. I was brought back to reality in an instant when Jane yanked me away. "Did that glass just crack right now? That has never happened before. Come on, we need to go." Jane seemed like she was trying to avoid the glass situation more than Derek's cell. "What was that thing? Please don't tell me those are the type of things that we're gonna have to deal with on the other side." Jane gave in. "Actually, this originated from Earth. That was Subject 18, nicknamed Toon or Stickman. We contained him about 45 years ago and knew about his origins for about 105 years. We have to do some maintenance on that cell. In all of the years we've had this thing, I've never seen the glass crack like that. These people get even stranger and stranger. John and Jane both seemed like they were almost my age, maybe like 3 or 4 years older. Not over a century. And Earth? We really know nothing about our own damn home. How does something like that even come into existence? You guys had that thing sitting in that cell for 45 years? You should have named it Needletooth or Drill Sergeant. I would have, after all of that time around the thing. Jane looked puzzled and stayed silent. You know, because when it smiles at you, the teeth, I said, while pointing at my own teeth and making drilling motions. It smiled at you? It doesn't smile. It never has before. I need to bring this to John's attention if you are correct. She took me by the arm and we started to make our way to Derek's cell. Good luck, Carter. I shot my head back to the direction of the toon's door to see it standing upright, smirking at me through the small window. Next thing I know, I was at Derek's cell, watching him stare at his jar of eyes. It was very ironic how he did this with no eyes himself, but it seemed like he could see anyways. He even looked at me when talking or turned to Jane when addressing her. It looked like he could draw too, noticing shapes of eyes etched into the wall by his bed. If I focused on it, I can see the small smears of blood on the etchings because he probably did them with his bare hands. Gonna find Johnny, huh? Derek said, holding the jar of ice. Yeah, I'm gonna try, but there's a huge chance I'm not gonna make it back. Derek smirked. You are going to thrive, Carter. The other side needs you. I don't know how Derek knew we were going to the black hole. He seemed to know a lot more than he should, and a lot more intelligent than the dumbass stoner I knew him as before. Yeah, I'm going to the other side. How did you know, and what do you mean the other side needs me? I can see where you're going. I can see they need you. That's that. Good luck, Carter. Derek then winked at me, and I felt a chill go down my spine. Alright, man, whatever you say. I just wanted to say bye to you before we leave. Hopefully, I can get us all the help we need to get everything back to normal. I can provide the help we all need. Carter, we both know our lives can never be normal anymore. I left Derek there, listening to his laughter slowly diminish as we ascended to level 2. Ah, Jane, Carter, I've got it all set up, and I have these. John was sitting at a desk with some computers and notebooks. Next to him were 2 backpacks on a table, and beside that was a machine that looked like it was stolen from aliens or something. It resembled 2 sideways teleporters from the video game Nazi Zombies on the map The Rise, connected by a metal cylinder that was covered in similar markings as the piece of metal they used to subdue Derek. It pulsed with energy, and the markings would glow a deep blue with each pulse. The shimmering almost put me in a trance, as I've never seen technology like this before in my life. John finished typing something into a terminal that was connected to the machine and walked over. Alright, Carter, our destination is Messier 87. Once we are on the other side, the program I installed into this machine right here should send us to the first planet with a survivable atmosphere. These packs right here are vital to our survival. Do not lose them by any means. You should be able to survive with it for months in almost any type of climate if you know how. He gestured over to a futuristic machine. It's been calibrated. This is your last chance to walk out of here if you think this is too big for you to handle. I instantly looked at him and responded back. I'm going to the other side. Let's just get this shit over with. John smirked. Alright then, Jane, you know what to do from here. Make sure we don't get zapped to some random universe, okay? Jane retorted back sarcastically. Sure, John. It's not like I'm the one who built this thing. Jane walked over to the terminal and started working on it while John put on a pack and tossed me the other. Aren't there supposed to be 3 packs? 1 for each of us? Jane is actually staying behind. She needs to control the machine and keep the facility safe while we're gone. 2 guys, 1 black hole. Man, that sounded wrong. Whatever, you know what I meant. I wished we all went there together, but John was right. Who was supposed to monitor Derek and the facility if it was all 3 of us? I picked up the pack and walked up to the machine with John. He pulled out a needle-like object that was sparking with the same color blue energy as the machine and pushed it into the center. The metal absorbed it, and John walked into the cylinder as an opening the perfect size of his body opened up from the metal. I followed after, and we both got seated in a couple of seats that looked like they were designed for a sci-fi movie and buckled in. "Alright, Jane, we're ready. Commence transport." Commenced. My ears rang as I tried to regain myself. I was so disoriented, I forgot where I was and what I was doing for about a good 5 seconds before my brain started to kickstart itself. My vision was doubled and my head slightly hurt. I groggily looked over to see John still sitting in his seat like normal. Figures. "Ah, good, you're awake. We're about to enter the event horizon. You've been out for about 5 minutes, by the way." I looked outside to see one of the most terrifyingly beautiful things I have ever experienced. Before me was an insane ray of energy bursting out of this void that I couldn't even see the end of because of how close but simultaneously far it was at the time. There were objects and light rays getting projected straight into the beam of energy, and everything was almost moving too fast for me to register. The light was almost blinding, but so intensely beautiful. The only reason our eyes didn't burn out is probably from whatever this craft is made of. It's like metal, but strangely has other properties, like allowing us to pass through. It's like metal, but strangely has other properties, like allowing us to pass or see through it. That beam of energy and radiation right there is a relativistic jet. That's our ticket in. A what? John smirked, but his eyes planted on the black hole. Get ready. In another instant, I felt some insanely intense pressure and watched everything stretch slightly as I was pushed into my seat with gravity. We were engulfed in a huge white flash of energy, and I fell unconscious once again. I knew I was in a different place the moment I regained my consciousness. I was still inside the spacecraft, but we definitely weren't in Kansas or the Milky Way at all anymore. I looked up at the stars to see a bunch of weird shapes and energies throughout the skies. There were things that were way bigger than stars, and they straight up looked like CDs in space. As in, I could tell they were flat from the angles of certain discs. Flat earthers would be having a fucking blast right now. The sky was also covered in some strange web-like energy that swirled colors like dark crimson, neon green, and electric blue. The energy seemed to flow from the same anomaly in the sky that was hard for me to comprehend. The best way I can put it is like this. It looked like an inverse sun that had a twister coming out of it. Then imagine the twister branching out into thousands of strands that enveloped the sky itself like vines, encasing the planet we were on. If you were to see it from a space bird-eye view, it would look like the anomaly and the planet were trying to eat each other like parasites. The blackness of the sky also pulsed a blood red every now and then, and it scared me to my core every time it did. When it happens, it originates from somewhere else in space, so you can almost see the red wave coming. It was just too unnatural for me to not notice and get scared. It was so strange. In this place, you could feel space better. It's hard to explain, unless you have experienced it firsthand. But try to imagine everything more 3D looking, I guess. More depth perception that allows you to tell the distance and shapes of things more accurately. It almost felt like a real-life video game. The area felt slightly warmer, but besides that, everything seemed survivable outside. Snapping me out of my amazement, John tossed me my pack. Alright Carter, this is new territory for you and me. Pull out your rebreather. It should be in one of the pockets. The atmosphere here is undocumented, so we have zero idea of the toxicity or survivability of the air. I pulled out a mask that reminded me of those types of face masks that characters like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat wore, just more jet black, and when I put it on, it molded to the shape of my face. It looked like if Kakashi Hatake from Naruto had a super futuristic mask and gave it to me. I looked through the rest of the pack to see some interesting things. First, there were some basic survival gear like water, MREs, water purifier, combat knife, no 2 books, etc. When I dug deeper in the pack is where I found some cool things. Some of the stuff I couldn't even tell what the use was for. For a while, I could recognize the simpler things. I pulled out some type of clothing, a pistol, and a couple pieces of the strange metal tech. Yes, put those clothes on as well. They are designed to adapt to whatever this environment ends up being like. As up for the gun, you're more than qualified to use it without training. If you ever played airsoft, paintball, or laser tag, you're more than capable of using this. One more important thing. The mag contains 12 special rounds that will regenerate themselves back. 30 minutes each, so 12 rounds equals 6 hours. They are highly powerful as well, so only use it as a last resort and use them wisely, as you do not want to be stuck waiting for a round to recharge in a real situation. The clothes we brought along were these weird black cloth-like material strips that melded with my body shape and kind of looked like robes and ranger armor at the same time. The material felt durable, even though it looked thin. It also started to keep me at a comfortable temperature as I noticed the warmth I felt earlier go away. Very strange. There was also a black poncho with a hood we put on over our clothes that was made for weather conditions. I took the knife and gun out of the pack and holstered them in slots that were conveniently placed in spots my hands naturally gravitated towards. Once all readied up, I had to admit, I felt like a badass. I was standing there looking like a Specs Ops space version of a scout from Attack on Titan. Too bad, not one soul will believe me. John touched the side of the machine and the needle key came out. He then grabbed it and we walked out of the craft, straight into the new universe. I looked at the scene before me in awe. The dirt was blue and the grass was purple. The night sky was so foreign and clear. The trees were jet black with rainbow-colored leaves, and I saw different flowers and shrubs I never even would have thought could exist. Flowers with patterns like spirals or geometric shapes. I went to examine a flower that looked like a blood-red sunflower with black seeds, and it hissed at me when I got too close. Definitely not gonna try that again. I was taking in the beauty of the new world as John looked at a holographic screen that came from a band on his wrist. Alright, there seems to be an energy surge emanating from those woods over there. I think we should start by checking that out. I thought John was talking about the black-barked rainbow trees, but when I looked over to where he was pointing at, the section of trees changed. We were in a clearing surrounded by trees and plants. Most of the trees surrounding us were those rainbow trees, but the part John pointed at was different. The area resembled more of a giant bamboo forest of concrete columns that I couldn't see the end of. It just stretched into the sky until it just disappeared into the void above. They were trees though, as I saw a piece of one of the strange columns and it contained rings like a normal tree. With every now and then, I would see a couple of small branches with a couple of black leaves on it as well. The whole area was covered in a foggy mist. My brain screamed, "Fuck that." But I agreed nevertheless. I felt the air around me get cooler the moment we entered the mist, even with the temperature moderation. That means, if I was just standing here normally, I would probably start to freeze to death in the mist. This was some damn good technology. I watched a leaf crumble into icy flakes when I touched it. We continued inwards. After about 5 minutes of walking, I felt like we were lost. Everything looked identical from every direction. I looked up to see the mist conceal the sky as well. Damn, that was scary. Imagine looking up to see thousands of tree bamboo things just out of the ground and disappear into the white misty unknown. Every direction looking exactly the same. That was my reality at the moment. Man, I hope we find something important in here. I want to get the fuck back to the craft, I said, feeling my anxiety slowly build up. This place was too quiet. Not one sign of life at all. No rustling or wind brushing against nature. Just cold, dry silence. Don't worry, Carter. I feel the same way. While we're here, we might as well take some samples of everything to take back and analyze later. We're making first contact after all. Sounds good, John. Just please, don't walk away. I do not want to get lost in here. Gotcha. Just holler if you start to lose sight. But we should be close at all times. John started taking samples of the soil and inspecting some plants and the grass, while I looked around for something to take a sample of. I took out the combat knife and decided I was going to cut a piece of fresh tree bark. I started to make an incision and a black liquid slowly dribbled out. I touched it with my gloved fingers and noticed I could still feel things through the strange material. The substance felt like a slightly runny sap. I finished my incisions and put a small square of bark away, then proceeded to fill a vial up with the black sap. I turned around to give John the samples when I witnessed something that would make anyone with a sane mind never to go outside again. John was kneeling down with a few different samples of soil and plants next to him. This was normal. The Mickey Mouse gloved hand that was unnaturally stretching from a black arm that was behind one of the column trees. Not fucking normal. John! I screamed. He glanced up and raised his eyebrows. He barely had time to look at it before I watched it stretch forward and yank John away just like a fucking cartoon, straight into the whiteness that surrounded me. The thing was so fast. I thought John was fast. I had the gun in my hand in split seconds and I pointed it in every direction around me, not knowing where another gloved hand could pop out. Fuck, fuck, I screamed, my panic and anxiety hitting the breaking point. I'm fucking alone. I knew this was going to be a suicide mission. If John didn't even stand a chance, what's gonna happen to me? There was no sound at all when it snatched John. I threw the samples into the small bag that John brought along and slung it onto my back while I kept the pistol pointed in different directions. I was searching frantically for something, just knowing this thing was trying to sneak up on me. I was almost too late. I stood there, and in my peripheral vision, I noticed something fly in the opposite direction. I took a chance and stood there for a second more, taking in a breath and telling myself, fuck it. I swung my arm around and blindly shot the pistol to where I wasn't looking and flinched, not knowing if I was going to get snatched or not. My ears were greeted with a loud laser-like boom and then a crack. I swung my head in the direction of the shot and I saw the Mickey Mouse glove explode. Yellow liquid bleeding out of the black arm in a high-pitched that sounded like a fucking cartoon from the 1930s. A huge chill instantly flew down my spine the instant my ears registered that yelp. I think I just discovered something that will mentally scar me far worse than any evil clown can. I really didn't want to know what it looked like or if there were more things in the mist just like it. I started sprinting, not caring or even knowing at all in which direction it was. I was in survival mode. My gunshot seemed to finally break the silence as now I heard creepy giggles every now and then while I sprinted through the column trees. Some sounded high-pitched, some were female, some were male. Every single one sounded menacing and obviously joyful at the same time as well. They came from all around me as I ran. I saw another shape and I shot randomly behind me about 3 to 4 times in different spots to keep the things at bay, and it seemed to work for the moment. I heard another disturbingly giddy voice in the distance.
Golly, that one almost got me.
I knew I couldn't keep this up for long. I knew I had at least 6 shots that I needed to be smart with. But I had no idea where to go or what to even do. Whatever these things were, their intentions are obviously not good, and it seemed like they were taking pleasure from this as well. I continued to sprint and sprint until my clumsiness almost ruined me once again. I tripped over a root and slammed into one of the pillar trees. It threw me off balance, but I didn't fall over. I kept going, and I saw a shape of a building start to form in the distance. I managed to blow up another hand with 2 more shots as I made my way into the unknown structure. Once close enough, it looked exactly like how a building would look on Earth. Just slight differences in the style. I looked at the top of the building and barely make out the words, Will Fleischer Studios. I ran up to the door and thanked the twisted god watching over me as the door was unlocked. I slammed the door behind me and caught my breath while locking it. After a couple of seconds to catch my bearings, I listened to the laughs and giggles grow fainter until it was dead silent again. I looked around the room I was in to see I was in some type of lobby. It seemed like I was the first person to step foot in here for years, as everything had a layer of dust and seemed to be stuck in time. I cleared the room and made sure I was alone. I'll explore the rest of the building later. Right now, I'm mentally and physically exhausted. I need time to process these events and figure out what the fuck I'm supposed to do. One other thing I just realized is, I have no idea if this update is even going to post. I'm in a different dimension, so I doubt it. All I can do is try though, as nobody probably even had the chance to even do so. If it does, it would be amazing and we would both play a part in history. If not, this is still a good way to retain my sanity. I will update this either way. Thank you to everyone still around, and I will update when given the next good chance. Thanks, and wish me luck. Carter Lux.